Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of video game news. We'll have about a 20-minute warm up or so and then we'll jump into the actual news. Is what I normally say, but actually I guess today, being Wednesday, January 1st, there's I think basically 4 or 5 bits of news today and that's it. Unsurprisingly, between Monday and Wednesday at the end of the year, there's not been any real announcements or any big anything happening. There's been some YouTubers that have done some Game of the Year wrap-ups content, but very little of that even I've seen. At the end of this year, I'm trying to find new video game reviewers and content creators to follow that might have more interesting content, but right now the only thing I can even slightly suggest, if it is your type of thing, would be Sex Positive Gaming's top Steam games of 2024, which came out 4 hours ago, and I don't know if I can even really promote that channel consistently without potentially risking my YouTube channel getting deleted. So, but yeah, that's pretty much been the only thing that's really worth that I've even really seen, because those are inherently different kinds of games that I'm unaware of, whereas 2024, as far as your mainstream games, have been incredibly lackluster and incredibly obvious. Yeah, we can engage a little bit with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and open a pack, even though I'm not really playing the game anymore. There are some Pokemon TCG Pocket new events that came out. So mostly it's a single player event though, and so very quickly I accomplished most of what needed to be accomplished in the first few hours of that event. Yeah, I haven't looked at the news on Yu-Gi-Oh! In an incredibly long time. One thing I have been looking at is that there's a couple of really good tutorials on how to use the Godot engine and make games with that. And there is certainly something to be said about the Godot engine's capability. See, here's one that would actually be worth getting if I had enough crystals, but since I'm not playing the game, I am now fully out of crystals and just out of the progression system to do the dailies to get crystals. Meanwhile, I imagine they have opened up maybe a couple more stories since I last looked in the single player mode, but I don't feel like it's gonna be any real difference there. It's just yet another couple of experiences. Yeah, obviously new secret packs. We can do a free pull here on the new secret pack. But yeah, it is very interesting, certainly, the contrast. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, a very complicated trading card, collectible card game, versus Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is very much not a complicated experience at all. It is the opposite of complicated. It is way too simple for its own good, and it's frankly fairly boring. I think I've maybe figured out, just using the rest of these gems, that you can earn about 5 rewards extra per day for playing games against players or playing single player mode. Maybe gives you the same reward, but the multiple currencies there certainly confuse the issue quite a bit. Here's yet another animation style that just looks like completely different from what Yu-Gi-Oh! It's incredibly inconsistent animation style has been. There's almost something to be applauded for that, to say Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a canvas and they can bring in different animators. But it comes with the trade-off of the cards not thematically feeling connected. Oh man, there would have... Hindsight, knowing now that there's a 25% off sale for new players to catch up, which in fairness, if I hadn't been playing basically since day one, I would probably want new players to be able to catch up on some of this content that is just visual themes and skins anyways. If people want to waste gems on that, it doesn't really affect the gameplay. I was previously a very large proponent on the concept of them giving just massive amounts of cards for free to new players too, since there's 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Although maybe not quite 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel in the regular experience. Apparently you can make replays a thing now too. So yeah, 4 or 5 months after I stopped playing, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has changed a little, but not by enough. And yeah, certainly I couldn't really recommend too many players jumping into Master Duel at this point. Although I guess I will applaud them for not making yet another new Yu-Gi-Oh! Game to replace it. But give it a year or two and we'll see if that's still the case. So that's all I'm going to talk about as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! The problem now that I've watched some tutorials on using the Godot engine to either make games or you can make other kinds of apps, is now I have some small bit of inspiration to make a app or two, and certainly there's one that I could see making where I'm just recreating a existing very old Android app that is basically abandonware at this point. It can't be installed on new phones. Not that the Godot engine is inherently the greatest way to make a mobile game or a mobile app, but it probably would add some portability to it and be fairly easy enough to do that. I probably could think of a couple other ideas too if I really put my mind to it. Of course, I can't do any of that because I'm still chained with this albatross around my neck, and that I need to clean house and declutter, and that's first and foremost going to be the only thing I can really do legitimately and logically. Doing anything else would be frankly insane. And even after I clean house and declutter, then I just need to move on to the next step, which will take more of my time too. So I'm not imagining that in 2025, which is now where we are, I'm going to have a lot of free time to do anything. In fact, even doing these live streams is going to be argued by many to be unimportant and waste of time. Although many probably would have made that argument always. But yeah, I'll be lucky to even get back to making content and scheduling content. I also have decided that I need to give up on the newest version of UI Vision. something happened there. Much like the Android app, I think what happened is somebody else got in charge. Either the UI Vision's development was handed over or sold, and there's just a different person. Even if it is the actual same person, there's certainly a different mentality as far as the focus there. Problem inherently is that the newest versions are not working of UI Vision, and so my macros are broken still. And it's not a case where I think I can just change how I'm doing things and it's my fault there. It's just not working, and the person in charge of UI Vision right now does not seem like they care. The forum is full of spam. The forum has at least one answer that looks like an AI generated answer. The newest version are focused very much on promoting and selling AI as a feature, which, yeah, the attention is just not there to make sure the current functionality of existing macros actually work. And unfortunately, there's not another program that I know of that I could move over to that would be any better, I don't think. And the Godot engine and programming my own macros would not be reasonable in that case, because there's just a lot of interactivity that you have to use for the underlying API of Selenium, which is what UI Vision uses. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to install the older version of UI Vision and live with it as it was, which is what I was doing before. Inherently, this is the irritants that newer versions can't be updated, but also I guess I didn't really want to do newer features. But even the older version of UI Vision wasn't working amazingly well. It too was breaking, but less frequently than the newest version. And so yeah, I'm coming with a lot of complaints today. Still playing Memento Mori, still watching Fire Force anime on Hulu, which is a show that I think got a little weirder than I thought it was gonna get. Like the idea of a firefighting team that was literally fighting with fire probably should have evolved a little bit slower than it did, because you really don't get even a couple of episodes where here's a regular office building fire or house fire, or here's something like that where we're just saving people. It fairly quickly turns into just a Dragon Ball type series that does deserve some acclaim, I would say, because it is trying to be more consistent in that everybody is fighting with some kind of fire related ability instead of just different people having different magical abilities. But that's about it's pretty surface level even in that consistency. And inherently fire can be stretched to mean energy, and almost anything can be done with energy. But yeah, there's probably some other series I've been watching. I finished watching What We Do in the Shadows, which that last season was pretty awful, and then that last episode tried to really redeem itself and isn't the worst last episode, but yeah. I kind of question whether only the first couple of seasons of What We Do in the Shadow were actually worth doing, and actually had enough comedy to go around it. And then it ran dry as a concept, I think, probably after the second or third season, with the occasional good individual episode. I briefly fast forwarded through this New Zealand show that I guess maybe is for teenagers and kids, called Atlantis High, on Amazon Prime Video, and I didn't get that at all. That was an extremely weird show that felt like it was half Erie, Indiana, if it was 4 or 5 times weirder than Erie, Indiana, while also adding kind of a Porky style, like, sex comedy element to it for high school actors that frankly looked like they were probably high school actors. A lot of people in bikinis and swimwear as just the default apparel that people are wearing all times, so just a lot of skin being shown too, and frankly a straight up peeping through a hole in the showers scene in the very first episode. So yeah, it seemed like a very weird show in its weirdness, and also in whatever target audience. So they talk about some of those Nickelodeon shows and how there's these like subtle fetishes being shown, and just people showing off their feet and stuff, and Atlantis High blows that out of the water. In fact, Atlantis High felt like it was somewhat inspired by like something like Lex. Of course, the difference there is Lex was at least adult actors, and the pretense that it was for adult viewers. But yeah, I don't know if there's a level of appropriateness on Atlantis High. Of course, I only fast forwarded to it, so maybe there was some deeper concept that I missed there. I had a whole nightmare where my TV got logged out of Amazon, and apparently I'd changed the login and password on Amazon, and for a second there I thought my entire Amazon.com account had been deleted, and I'm like, oh no, that's bad. Not just specifically for Prime Video, but I also would hate to lose all the history and all the wish lists, which I have a fairly extensive, probably far too large wish list on Amazon.com that I wouldn't want to lose. I could probably lose the Prime Video history to some extent, but I would kind of hate to do that, start all over again. Although weirdly, in that whole process of trying to log back in again, there is a amount, I don't know if I'd say it's a decent amount, of videos you can watch on Prime Video without even signing in. Or, well, you have to sign in, but you don't have to have Prime Video as an aspect. Now, that does not include any of the originals, which are arguably at least 80% of the quality content on Prime Video anyways, but yeah, you could potentially go free. And if you really wanted to go in that direction, I imagine you can nowadays find several free ad-supported over-the-air television streaming options that would let you be free if you're willing to watch ads, which particularly in Prime Video, since you're being forced to watch ads in almost every case anyways, that the argument for having Prime for Prime Video really is not a good argument, and the argument for having Prime for Prime Prime gaming is not particularly a very good argument either. Having Prime for photo backups is a decent argument there. I don't think there's any other place where you can back up as many photos. And Prime for free shipping, depending on where you live, may or may not be worth it, assuming you're getting even any real benefit from that these days. And yeah, I definitely feel like I've watched some other shows, but I can't help but think that maybe I watched an entire show and completely forgot about it over the course of yesterday. Although I do also want to say that I felt like I actually accomplished a decent amount of stuff yesterday too, as far as cleaning and decluttering. So I was fairly happy with the amount of progress I made yesterday. I don't think other people would be happy with the amount of progress I made, but on a sliding scale adjusted for my own inability to do anything physical, yeah, I was fairly happy with the amount of progress. Of course, it has been a month and I'm still nowhere close to finishing cleaning and decluttering the house, and that is an insane statement for most people. It certainly, to me, reminds me just why there are people that live in houses that are messy and or dirty, and inherently it also rings of the whole situation where if you don't have effectively a wife or house husband that is just constantly cleaning house and taking care of a house, that is you're unlikely to be able to do that yourself. And frankly, there are definitely too high of standards being held to some people who are expected to work full-time and also be a full-time house cleaner. But then, in fairness, there are also some examples that have been pointed to of house husbands or housewives that are incredibly lazy, and they're sitting around all day and still not keeping a clean house. Yeah. But yeah, it is a full-time job, certainly, just to keep a house clean and organized. Weirdly, even for one person. Yeah. There's just a weirdness to that, certainly. I cannot imagine myself actually doing a great job cleaning and decluttering. And there's a difference between decluttering and just maintaining. So if I get the house exactly where I want it, if I have really good systems as far as this is where that goes and this always gets put back where it goes, so every item has a place and every item gets put back in its place, then you can maintain it a lot easier. But the deciding where is the right place and figuring out, is this the natural place? The classic example is that if there's a table at the front door and everybody's putting their house keys on that table, then you probably need a bowl on that table where the house keys go. Although I don't know why people drop house keys in the first place. Like, it would make a lot more sense for mail to be put on a table near the front of the door, but even that really is just a level of laziness at that point, instead of mail just being dealt with. But yeah, I guess maybe women who are changing out, well, I guess there's a huge difference there too. If you're wearing like jeans multiple days a week, which is what guys tend to do, then keeping keys in your pocket makes sense. But if you're a girl and you're changing dresses, or if you're a guy and you're changing pants every day, then yeah, you would want to take out your keys. But then you also would want to take out your wallet at that point, and I've never heard anybody say they were putting their entire wallets at the front door. That seems silly. So yeah, there's an inconsistency in how people think and act too. None of this has anything to do with video games, obviously, though. This is just me warming up. We can see on the 24-hour concurrent charts of SteamDB here that there's not been particularly massive changes. But I don't think the numbers are particularly low for the big ones. Well, I will say, yeah, it does seem like the number might be a little bit low for Marvel Rivals. Of course, my chart's not going to change over the course of a couple of days. I started watching and only got about halfway through this video of 6 different players with randomizers installed, games modded to give items to the other players when you pick up something. So one player was inherently playing Minecraft, and when he got an achievement in Minecraft, it would give a star to another player playing Mario 64. So 6 completely different games, all being played in parallel, and all of the lives of the players are synchronized. So if one player dies, they all die, which certainly slowed down the whole process. I'm not sure if I really think that's an interesting concept, or I mean, it's an interesting experiment certainly, but I'm not sure if in the long run that makes a lot of sense. It probably would never be done in a games done quick style presentation, and if it was, it would be 2 people playing 2 different games, not 6 for sure. One of the games that was being played was Sonic Adventure 2, which from the looks of it, there seems to not be any story mode in Sonic Adventure 2. It seems to be just a collection of races and little mini character raising, and that seems to be it. There seems to also be maybe some boss fights, but I don't know, maybe they started it in a non-story mode, but in reality, I guess if I think about it, I don't think I have seen Sonic Adventure 2 footage, so it may be a very lackluster game, and so from the looks of it, it seemed to be incredibly buggy as a game and causing a lot of deaths. Another player was playing like Battleborn or Bloodborne or one of the Dark Souls games, which you'd think that would be the most difficult one, where he'd be dying over and over again, but if anything, that was the most consistent game of the 6 being played. But yeah, I don't know if that's really a great concept or interesting concept. Even randomizers on one game are really, in my mind, just an admission that you've played too much of the game and you've gotten bored of it. But yeah. So we do have the winners of the 2024 Steam Awards on the front page of Steam today, which I think we had already announced that, or Steam had already announced that. I don't know why I'm saying we. I don't work for Valve. But yeah, seems like they went through and just made it right on the front page, which is not a terrible idea, although it does inherently highlight how only a few of these are going to be discounted by much, and there clearly is not some kind of negotiation or contract that every single game agrees to. I wouldn't be surprised if the default negotiation for Valve to list a game on Steam instead of just using Steam Direct is to say, if your game is highlighted, we can put it on sale for at least 20%. Notice how 20% is showing up here on several of these, with the only real outlier being Elden Ring, which is a slightly older game. But I also wouldn't be surprised if something like Black Myth Wukong negotiated away and said, no, we're not willing to let you determine when something is going to go on sale. We do know that when games are submitted, there is a range at which games can automatically be put on sale. But yeah. Inherently, I guess also, if you're winning a Steam award, your game is probably pretty good too, so there isn't the best argument to put it on sale. But yeah, big difference here in discounts with 90% off for Assassin's Creed Origins and State of Decay 2 and South Park The Stick of Truth, as far as real deep discounts. Which, if I was buying games, that would be my knee-jerk reaction, certainly, is to buy something that is deeply discounted. Although I own several of those games too. And yeah, the front page is still doing this winter sale, showing a lot more. This game, by the way, is made in the Godot engine, I found out. But yeah, I was personally, let me just say that, incredibly surprised that you really could get fairly far in just a couple hours using the Godot engine to making a Vampire Survivors style game. That being said, there's probably still a lot more you would want to add once you start polishing and adding features. But to even get to the point where it's a top-down, auto-targeting, enemies are coming at you at all times shooter, yeah, is really surprising. Now, one thing about the two tutorials I really have looked at that does need to be pointed out is they are handing you animations and art for free. So if you don't have an artist, you're going to really have to either find an asset pack or something to start, because I could imagine it's going to take weeks, not hours, but weeks, if not months, to hand make art if you're not artistically inclined, or animations. And inherently, the two tutorials I've looked at are very much focusing on a, let's look at this one some more later. They're focusing in on 2D pixel art kind of art styles. They are not focusing in on hyper-realistic 3D art styles. There is wireframing in 3D in Godot engine, but honestly, I don't think enough tutorials have been made for enough people to actually make games doing the using wireframing and like skeletal designs in 3D. So yeah, it would be fairly difficult to justify suggesting making something like Fortnite in the Godot engine. Plus, I don't know if the network code even exists, let alone is good enough in the Godot engine for something like a Fortnite clone. And things like Unreal and possibly Unity may just have better lighting mechanics in the top tier hyper realistic style of graphics that people would be looking for. Did we get the upcoming games? Yes, we did. Just did that. I already forgot. But yeah, that is kind of shocking how much is done, because they inherently have these node concepts and there's just a ton of hidden programming, I would have to assume, behind each code. So it is a abstraction layer and effectively an API using the Godot scripts, the GD scripts, to run things while not getting into the weeds about dealing with how characters actually move left and right. You still have to do 1 or 2 lines of code to handle when a character moves left and right, but that's kind of it. Whereas having programs like Pong with no visual rendering engine at all in C++ when I was back in school, I can tell you probably was thousands upon thousands of lines of code, because you're just having to handle and program and figure out how to program things from scratch. Plus, I wouldn't have been a particularly good programmer, and frankly I don't know if I was even really using functions appropriately, let alone classes. But yeah, there's a Pong tutorial in Godot, and you do it in probably less than 100 lines of code in total. And that is shockingly easy. In fact, the tutorial for the Vampire Survivors is so well played. The only real problem with the tutorial video, I would say, is that the player, the commentator sometimes mispronounces a couple of things and didn't catch it, and in one time he repeated himself and was obviously going to edit himself, and it didn't catch that edit. But he says like subtract instead of subtract a couple times, and subtract is, to my knowledge, not a word, but you get the general gist of what he means. And if that's the biggest thing you can complain about, it's a pretty good tutorial, and it explains so much that, yeah, I think you can show it to a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and they may not get it, and they may it may be over their head, since this very well may be their first introduction to programming at all, but there's a decent chance that they will absorb enough of it to be inspired instead of frustrated. Although 10 maybe is a little young, maybe wait till 12, depending on the kid. And the thing I would like to, I want to point out, and I really should just be showing the video, if anything, is that it's not using the GD blocks scratch drag and drop plugin. It is just using the text and doing it the right way, instead of trying to put a crutch under programming games, where a crutch is never going to be helpful in the long run. And yeah, it's such a small amount of code. One thing though I would like to see addressed in tutorials, and in need of these tutorials addresses the idea of having options to have different resolutions and accommodate that. It is very much a case where it seems like both tutorials just assume your resolution and leave it at that, which is not super helpful. It's not realistic in the long run. Neither games have any dialogue, so any kind of like audio subtitles stuff is not an issue. either that's being addressed, and there's, I imagine, a whole bunch of things. Yep. Which that does get back to what I was thinking, is that while these tutorials may get you hyped for developing a game fairly quickly, the reality is you're not going to make a good game in a couple hours and then put it on Steam and start selling it. You're going to make a incredibly simplistic game that's going to be accused of being an asset flip in a couple hours at most. You're going to start getting into the weeds, wanting to add new features, new enemies, and a lot of that is going to be a lot of repetition. Once you have a decent amount of content like that, then you may at some point hear some of the movies. This is the first time I've seen Steam actually recommend any of their small collection of movies, which they're really not encouraging movies on Steam anymore anyways. But yeah, you're going to get into a system while developing it where you're going to just have to make 100 different types of enemies. You're going to have to figure out ways to procedurally generate more content. To flush it out and fill it in. Which, I suppose that is the difference between a good game and a bad game. Is that, not that SnowRunner is a bad game or Supermarket Simulator is a good game, but inherently you are just going to have to, this game also was made in Godot, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into it, to put a lot of content in it, and not just be surface level as far as what the content looks like and how much content is there. Alright, let's move on. I'm surprised. I was really thinking that today may very well be just like a speed run of a stream, although I question whether that's the case or not. Here we have a very positive TPS, third-person shooter, where you can dress up the character, and clearly there is a focus on the character. It's kind of like Yeti, but one would hope, comparing that to Yeti, that this would actually be a better actual shooting experience and gameplay experience. Yeti, unfortunately, when I tried to play it, really was too much of a Metroidvania game that had some really clunky controls. I would also say the comparison to Yeti is not a direct comparison because the tags are different and the type of game is different, but mostly also because this character, while they may have a big butt, it's not in a skin tight latex outfit that as the player over obsessed about and looking at. Of course, there is something to be said about the female attracted gaze, which typically they would have called that the male gaze, and by gaze I mean G-A-Z-E. Probably should be a different word, female attracted perspective. In that there has never been a third person shooter with a male character that I can think of where you are zooming your camera back this much and angling it this much so you can see at least the top of the buttocks is here. There is also something very weird about the screenshot in that this character here is holding an axe, and yet the shadow clearly shows a character holding a flashlight. And I would say it feels like there's a lighting effect. So I guess maybe in the other hand that we're not seeing, she's holding a flashlight, because I guess this is supposed to be the axe. But that shadow does feel very weird. This is a much more realistic camera angle than I imagine you're going to spend more of your time looking at, where you are seeing that. Inherently, though, I think it would also be unfair for a female attracted perspective to complain about side boob when that's just the natural state of ladies, is that you will, from this angle, see some boobs, side boobs. Then you get back to this, and yeah. But Haiti, in comparison, is 100% just about the butt. Where this looks like this might actually be a game, and it's a game that's actually on the front page. Although, in fairness, most of the games, I think Haiti was also on the front page too. And I guess I'm not really showing enough unless I click show finalists, so we will see how bad my voting was once again. I imagine the sale is about to go off and all this will disappear. I guess this was my pick since it's colored in, but then this one's not colored in. So I'm very confused. Why is Helldivers 2 colored in when it says my nomination here was Black Myth Wukong? I'm gonna have to assume that this part is just bugged and it actually should be over here. So that's the only thing that would make sense. Yeah. And that does seem like that would have been what I voted for. It's an interesting thought, certainly, to say the best game on Steam Deck is God of War Ragnarok, where best here clearly means the best graphics in most people's minds. Because I can't really imagine that God of War Ragnarok is best played on the Steam Deck or is your best experience on the Steam Deck. But also I could imagine considerably fewer people played Electro than God of War Ragnarok, so there might be just a element there that's affecting the outcome also. Yeah. So this your nomination for one reason or another is not lining up to where it should be. So yeah, it does seem to me like I, with the perhaps exception of Black Myth Wukong in a couple places, completely voted wrongly or didn't vote with the majority at least. And unfortunately, we're not getting any Japanese specific games as far as winners this year, since Black Myth Wukong is a Chinese game. Yeah, and there definitely were some that probably should have won something more. Yeah, I definitely think I am leaning more and more towards wanting to see these kinds of awards. Not that the Steam Awards really matter that much, but I'd like to see these awards, particularly for the Steam Awards, be given out to a lot more people, and instead of having just a single winner. I think it would have been very much better just to say all 5 of these are winners, all 5 of these are equal winners, all 5 of these just give out an award. You'd still only be giving out 100 awards at most, and probably not even that many. No, it wouldn't be 50, even if each of these games were individually different games. And yeah, I think that would work overall better for me, instead of trying to pick a single winner in categories that are fairly broad and games that are fairly different. Alright, and that's going to bring us to the video game news, which is to say that's going to bring us to nothing. Like, Video Games Chronicle has here's what you got in Patreon, if you're a Patreon member. Which we can, I guess, kind of scroll down this to just kind of highlight how much I personally don't think their Patreon is worth it. That being said, that's going to come down to, did you ever even have an opportunity to kind of like the characters that are running Video Games Chronicles as a mainstream video game journal site? I think inherently part of their problem is that they started a podcast, I think maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, and they're immediately starting that behind a Patreon, where they should have probably been going 3 to 4 years for free with a podcast, just to get people to gain a fandom there. Inherently, I think it's a case where a lot of these sites were holding on exclusively to the advertising model of making money, and the second that they dried up, they got desperate and immediately tried to do a Patreon model, would be my guess as to what happened there. And yeah, that really doesn't work per se. And it's not like the writing wasn't on the wall. If I was going to start a mainstream video game journal site tomorrow, I would definitely have day one podcast. I would definitely have some advertisement, maybe a subscription to turn off ads for a small percentage of people who would want that. There would be a Patreon set up, but there wouldn't be any expectation of it actually having a lot of followers. But yeah, I would try, certainly in multiple different directions, to have as much income happening. Although inherently I would not make a mainstream video game journal site in the first place, because the written word is not what most gamers want in the first place. It would make a lot more sense to have a website as your backup to your TikTok, to your Instagrams, to your YouTubes, to your Twitch channels. Which I do think that's probably more where DF Retro succeeded in particular when they started, is that is a YouTube channel first, and if there is any website, I'm not aware of one that exists, and I don't go to their websites. Yeah. But yeah, that's all Video Games Chronicles has, and then we get to Gamatsu articles eventually, and I had to manually open all of these. So the game industry, a lot of which will be Japanese people, have their New Year's 2025 cards and messages, which we've got the time, so let us look and scroll down this aggregated list with minimal comment, and I guess maybe it's the year of the snake. Significant amount of these tweets are going to be in Japanese, and notice that these are still tweets. So if there's another website that the Japanese game development community is particularly getting on to. Gematsu is not following it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's perhaps something like Weeaboo or Shift or some other service that is maybe slightly more popular amongst Japanese developers. But then I wouldn't also be surprised if, even if it's slightly more popular, it's also just Japanese developers only posting in Japanese. And since we're talking about Twitter and social media, Meta has come out and admitted that they're going to try and increase and add the number of AI chatbot fake friends. And they're just going to straight up internalize what is already happening on Facebook, in that Facebook is effectively a wasteland for many people outside of the bots that are posting often AI generated art and often just garbage, nonsense slop. But yeah, Facebook and Meta, as the parent company of Facebook, just saying in the future you are going to have AI friends, is admitting that their whole service has failed to actually connect humans together and have them actually communicate with each other. Which, in fairness, I would say maybe society has increasingly failed to increase the amount of communication that they have amongst each other. And yeah, there is perhaps a limitation on just how much any one human can engage with other humans. The old theory was that you could only really have 100 relationships in your mind at one time, and yeah. And certainly my personal Facebook experience was weird in that I never wanted to have a Facebook in the first place. One person convinced me to get on Facebook, and then that person eventually got bored with Facebook and stopped using it themselves. And for the most part, I never used Facebook as a way of actually communicating with individual people, and instead simply used it as a visual diary of sorts. Often, for the most part, I'd say 99% of what I posted just to steal and repost memes, which even that system isn't really great, because if somebody else's account gets deleted or they delete that post, then it just says this post is deleted instead of showing a history of what was there. There's a brief time where I was reviewing video games and movies in print, and then those groups also disappeared or died. So yeah, I kind of just use Facebook as a way of wasting time, and always have. Unfortunately, I would say though, if Meta is admitting that they're going to just increase their user numbers by creating fake users, it's only a matter of time in which we're going to see that happen on other platforms too. And I would rather the whole system just collapse quicker than that, if that's the way it's going to go. As a YouTube content creator, it would be fairly annoying if I was getting 100 extra views on every video, but then 100 of those views are just AI fake users making fake comments and giving me fake watch time. while that would create a appearance of more success, it might make me happier if I could delude myself into believing it was true, or be tricked into believing it is true. The monetization aspect on YouTube in particular would almost certainly be thrown out of whack like crazy. This all really stems from the fact that advertisements have always been lies. The concept of impressions, the concept of that the number of people who are seeing your ad is anywhere as high, the concept that ads even work has always been exaggerated. A great example of that, as far as how ineffective ads are, at least for me, is that I saw a YouTube video for a really expensive $150 effectively hot chocolate maker, milk frother type device, which is way too expensive. And while that got me thinking, what would a milk frother hot chocolate maker really cost? So I went on Amazon and started looking at it, and inherently I would want one that could also boil water. And surprisingly, there's really only one Chinese product, kind of cheap Chinese product, it's about $50, that can boil water and heat baby formula and milk effectively. Because most electric kettles that can boil water are built so incredibly cheaply that they have at most 4 settings for like green tea, black tea, black coffee things, and boil water, and that's pretty much it. Whereas you have to go much lower temperature if you're going to skim milk, otherwise you would scald the milk. So in this whole process of looking at things that could also heat milk, to make a hot chocolate milk chocolate type drink, I searched through Amazon.com search to only be deluded with the same sponsored products over and over again, which is a nightmare, certainly when you actually are trying to find something different on Amazon.com. And none of those advertisements, in my opinion, affected me in any positive way at all. There's no way that paid placement and those advertisements are going to convince me that I would potentially want to buy any of those products when they are 100% not doing the thing I would want and not the product I'm actually looking for. So, to bring that back to video game advertisements, if I want to play a Pokemon-like game like Palworld, for instance, since we're looking at Palworld, which ironically is right next to the Pokemon Company, I am not going to be influenced or turned to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That it's just a completely different product. Now, perhaps there is an argument that Coca-Cola at one time convinced people who are used to just only drinking water to drink Coca-Cola, but almost certainly that one Coca-Cola advertisement only got people to continue to drink Coca-Cola because it's full of sugar, and sugar is frankly addictive and should be illegal. Interesting. So there's a company called Shift and a company called Shift Up. Interesting. I haven't heard of Shift. But yeah. And I look at new games being advertised on Steam all the time. I put a massive amount of them in the fault list. Very, very few of them actually get to the wish list as far as a game I'd even consider to buy. And frankly, almost none of them have actually convinced me to buy them. I'm not sure I've ever made a single spur of the moment sales purchase decision on Steam outside of sales and the price being right. But yeah. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I just don't think advertisements work. And inherently, these New Year artworks show the artistry that is often available extra, in how there are artists who are willing to go that extra mile for one extra picture. In Japanese games in particular. But yeah, these are effectively advertisements, and that one looks like it might have been a giveaway of some sort, even. But yeah, these mostly in Japanese, mostly just highlighting your company, their companies in particular, not specific games. I guess perhaps this highlights where. What game is this? Vanillaware. Whoops. Out of the blue. You get some Renaissance art. So I guess what I'll call it. But yeah, there's not a lot to really be said there as far as just them saying Happy New Year. It, I guess, maybe creates a little bit of goodwill towards the few people on Twitter following those video game companies. I've also heard, and probably believe this to be true, that Twitter itself has become pretty much is increasingly becoming a dead wasteland too, where people are not posting content anywhere as much as they once were, which that is believable too. That being said, if Blue Sky is going to be the new place, I think it is probably going to be a slow growth that happens there. I just don't think it is going to be an overnight success where everybody goes to Blue Sky. Although, who knows? There is room for a lot of change in the in the whole setup there. As far as, yeah, if TikTok gets banned in the United States, will a bunch of people move over to some new service or scatter to several different services? Who knows? You know, it just occurred to me, and it's already been 30 seconds, so it's too late, but that accidental Renaissance definitely should have been a thing where I should have just ended the stream immediately there. Just emergency dump out. Since I'm on a 30-second delay, I do think I could have probably done that. Just immediately stop the stream, dump out, and start it over again. Yeah. So yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time. But honestly, in most cases, if there's an accidental flash on screen of something that YouTube may not appreciate, it's probably going to be so fast, and I just would not react fast enough there anyways. But I guess my goal for 2025 is to not get my channel deleted, and we'll see if we can have that be the case this year instead of YouTube giving ridiculous strikes and things. Let's see. Yeah, and right now, honestly, if my channel was deleted, I'm not sure I'd spend too much time trying to recover it. I would want to recover it, certainly, but yeah. I don't know if I would really want to just make a new channel on YouTube or try and start all over again. I've spent 10 years on this channel and it's not succeeded. But yeah, there's still a few reasons why I would want to do that, but I don't have backups, and that is one of the many projects I need to work on in 2025, is to get my servers set up and get full backups as much as I can of my YouTube channel to a local server, local backups. But yeah, being a video game critic, I'm not sure I really would want to go through that frustration again and that effort, instead of just playing games just for my own personal fun of it. But honestly, I'm not sure I would play games for my own personal fun of it too. Like, without being able to ramble while playing the games, in a lot of cases, I do think I probably would just play a lot less and very possibly finish quit games and not finish them. Like, watching some of the footage of a player playing Ocarina of Time in that 6-game randomizer video I was watching, I'm not 100% sure I actually beat Ocarina of Time all the way to the end. I don't remember a lot of the late part of that game, so I kind of wonder if maybe I didn't beat the game. Maybe I just got busy with something else. And I can't help but think maybe a lot of kids have that situation where they think they beat games in their fuzzy memory when they get older, but in reality they just had to go back to school. They played a game over a summer, and whenever summer ended, they went back to school and just kind of forgot about it. But yeah, I'm not sure. I did beat that game, which is an interesting thought, certainly, that if I could play Ocarina of Time without Nintendo Content ID claiming it, I wouldn't be opposed to playing the PC ported fan port of Ocarina of Time, or just playing the game one more time. But unfortunately, there's no way to do that and make footage, and I guess if I wasn't making footage, then there would be a way to do it, but yeah, I don't know what I would be doing at that point either. In a weird way, I guess if my YouTube channel did get deleted, I might try and put videos back on Facebook on that wasteland. The only other thought would be to put it on something like Kick, one of the gambling sponsored websites that, yeah, I don't know if I really want to be affiliated with any of those sites. But yeah, as far as the other video game news for today, M2 shares its New Year's 2025 updates on Les Branch, Night Striker gear, and Ubusana, which I don't know what any of that is. Trying to see if my channel is even up right now. Yes, it is. Okay. So far, so good. And then Honkai Star Rail version 3.0 update, Peon of the Era Nova, launches January 15th. And I guess I could have done a flawless cleanup today, but I didn't, and am just looking for a fairly short stream, which I could have gone really short today. We could have tried to speed run this and be done in less than an hour. PlayStation Plus's monthly games lineup for January have been announced. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Then there's like one GameDeveloper.com article which says Stardew Valley has topped 41 million in lifetime sales. And then that's going to bring us eventually to all the new games on Steam. Let's see if I can find the right list here. Yeah. I think that would be this one. And I guess within this we might have some new gaming on Linux articles, but perhaps not. I think these probably are just going to be old gaming on Linux articles that we'll run into a couple times. There is going to be a new announcement. Well, weirdly, it's the same thing that had already been said, but the Game Awards put out a post on their YouTube channel saying Nintendo is going to make an announcement about the next Nintendo console before March 31st, 2025, which is the same thing they've been saying for 6 months, which is that they were going to, in the Q1 of 2025, make an announcement about their next console. So in a lot of ways, I felt like the Game Awards was literally just trying to get some free views by repeating something that was already well known without actually saying anything new. Yeah. Rogue Prince of Persia will not get Ubisoft Connect and no price rise in January. Which, why would they do anything with the game that they really just licensed out and don't really care about? Not to be confused with the other Prince of Persia game, which they didn't license out and didn't really care about. Here we have clearly an adult game that, yeah, with my macros being so broken, all that protective curation that was going on is, I assume, not working either. Well, it should be working for as little as it was working. One of the issues, if you were going to make a mobile game or a mobile app in particular using the Godot engine, is that you are going to have to just have fairly inconsistent icons, because there is no real standardized icon sets for Android versus iOS. Although you could pretty well, I think, have standardized icon sets for iOS and then different standardized icon sets for Android, although Android's icon sets may still look fairly different. And that would be something that the Godot engine probably cannot do, which would be to deeply integrate into already installed icon sets in the operating system of Android. That way it would look similar to other apps if there had been some kind of overlay theme installed, which that is ideally what I think the direction they want to go, is that you can change the theme of your operating system in Android and it will change the way all apps look. Of course, there is also certainly a problem of making a clone of an existing, even if it is abandonware, program, and that at best I would only feel comfortable with a give me a donation type button for that kind of product. Because the original ideas and concepts wouldn't really be that new or imaginative. It would be a lot wiser, certainly, to start from scratch, and then Gaming on Linux is not going to start posting new content until the 6th of January. Wow. So there's a decent chance that it's not going to be until like Monday, next Monday, before we start seeing any gaming news, any big amount of gaming news. Several things did go into public domain, like the dancing spooky skeletons animation from Disney at the January 1st. That's true every January 1st. But that doesn't mean somebody isn't going to claim it. I was on what's the name of the app? Just Watch. And there was this thing somebody had done where they'd taken a bunch of posters, almost every poster they could find of every movie, and sorted it, I assume, by just the average color on the posters, and then made a video where it showed every poster for like a frame or two, and still it was a super long video at that. So it's just like flashing, here's a poster of a movie, here's the next poster of the next movie, over and over again. And it's an interesting effect. Certainly it'd be like an interesting, hey, this is going to subconsciously show you some images, and the ones that catch your attention are kind of a great way to randomly pick out some new movies to watch. I kind of wish somebody would do that with video games, although inherently you would have to have a curation of video games, because it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to take every single thumbnail from Steam, which you probably could automate that and do that, and highlight them. Although that would kind of be the only real easy. Hollow OS is not one I've really researched too much as far as Steam-like operating systems. Some of these are before we started following Gaming on Linux. it certainly 2024 certainly was the year, I guess, of Steam and gaming on Linux in particular. The beginning of something, at least, where SteamOS is working directly with Arch Linux, and the Steam Deck having over 13,000 playable games. Meanwhile, Windows was particularly terrible this year. Yep. Steam Deck 2 probably coming in 6 months or so would be my guess. It might be a year, might be even a year and a half. A lot of tariff stuff might change things too. Nintendo going on the warpath against emulators was a big story this year too. Yeah. Let's see the GitHub on HoloOS. See, when was the last commit? Updated to README 8 months ago. Yeah, I don't think I would choose to go with HoloOS just in general, because I think there are better options that just moves faster. If you look at like releases here, May 31st, 2024 seems to have been the last release to be updated. Does seem like the project is pretty dead. Let's see if it's actions. No, that doesn't show you anything. I think the last thing to have changed here was 8 months ago, which was just a README file. This file here. And that seems incredibly slow compared to Bakelite Linux, which gets a new update fairly constantly, multiple times a day often. School teaching simulator. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to be a school teacher. I don't even think there's a experience there that seems like it would be great. If there was going to be a experience there that was great, it would probably be like Assassination Classroom or Great Teacher, several anime shows like that where the teacher is just this genius great teacher and there's individual students with individual problems. So it would have to be an incredibly narrative experience, which would best be suited, I think, for something like a visual novel if you were going to do that. I still wouldn't really call it a teaching simulator at that point, more than just a narrative experience where you happen to be a teacher. I doubt there are too many game developers that were teachers in the first place. There is minimal demand for video game programming teachers in schools, and I suppose a lot of people with video game degrees could be teachers, but I bet almost none of them did, because if you have a degree already, which is what you tend to need to have as a college degree to be a teacher, even a substitute teacher, and usually you need a teaching certificate on top of that, which is not, I think, that difficult to get. But if you have a video game computer science degree, you can almost certainly get some other job better than being a teacher, and arguably working at a call center as a level 2 tech or supervisor is probably a better job than being a substitute teacher or a teacher. It's not the same as having like an English college degree, where having an English college degree or a history college degree literally only allows you to be a teacher, to teach English or history, and there's just not any jobs in that field otherwise, but nothing else you can do with that degree. But even if there had been teachers that then went on to be game developers, I don't think they'd really have loved that experience enough that they would have wanted to turn it into a video game, or that that's really a marketable experience. If that makes any sense. There certainly is a thought where I could take all these new games that came out on Steam and try and turn them into some kind of background screenshot thing, but I don't really know how I would do it. And honestly, it would make a lot more sense to do it with the top 100 on the SteamDB concurrent chart than it would make sense. This one unfortunately doesn't support English. Yeah, it wouldn't make as much sense to do it with all the brand new games. This is a very weird looking game. Yeah, and that's it. So December 30th to December 30th, that's all we've got. Slightly more games today than last time. Fingers crossed, I'll be back on Friday and there will be more video game news to talk about and stuff. Otherwise, we've gone an hour and 33 minutes. Had I not rambled for 20 plus minutes at the beginning, and had I really rushed through this could have easily been an hour-long stream, which I'm sure some people may appreciate that. But consistently throughout the year, that just would have never been the case. There would have been too much news to talk about. Yeah, and I don't see any way that you could break up the stream and still cover this content I want to cover. Anyways, on this, let's change it to something less grotesque. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.